My wife cheated on me to chase true love. He loved her blindly but reality. And bills exposed her mistakes and shattered their dream completely. While I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk, the notification sound made me glance at my phone, expecting maybe a grocery list or dinner plans. Instead, I got a message that would change everything. I'm leaving you for someone who actually loves me. Don't try to stop me. I stared at the screen for a solid 10 seconds. Not because I was heartbroken or shocked, but because I was genuinely impressed by the audacity. After 12 years of marriage, this was how she chose to end things. A text message that sounded like it came from a teenage drama. My first instinct wasn't to call her, wasn't to rush home, wasn't to beg for an explanation. Instead, I found myself almost smiling. The woman who couldn't make a decision about what to order at restaurants had just made the biggest decision of her life via text. The irony was perfect. I typed back 2 words, safe travels. Then I set the phone down and went back to my reports. But my mind wasn't on numbers anymore. It was calculating something entirely different. See, my wife always assumed I was the weaker one in our marriage, the one who did the dishes without being asked, who remembered anniversaries, who apologized first after arguments even when I wasn't wrong. She mistook kindness for weakness, patience for stupidity. That was her first mistake. Her second mistake was assuming I'd fall apart without her. I finished my workday like nothing had happened, responded to emails, attended a conference, call, even grabbed coffee with a colleague who mentioned his divorce lawyer was excellent. Funny how conversations take interesting turns when you're actually listening. By 6 o'clock in the evening, I was sitting in my car in the office parking lot, phone in hand. But I wasn't calling her. I was calling someone far more important. Peterson and Associates, how may I help you? I need to speak with someone about divorce proceedings today. The receptionist must have heard the calm determination in my voice because she didn't ask questions. She just scheduled me for 7:30 in the evening, an emergency consultation, she called it. I called it perfect timing. Driving home, I thought about the house. Our house, technically, though legally. It was a different story. When we bought it 8 years ago, my credit score was stellar, my income stable. Hers? Well, let's just say the bank wasn't interested in her contribution. So, the mortgage, the deed, every piece of paper that mattered had my name on it, only my name. At the time, she said it didn't matter because we were married, we were partners. What's mine is yours and all that romantic nonsense. I agreed because I loved her and trusted her, but I also never changed the paperwork because, honestly, I forgot. Sometimes forgetfulness is the best kind of preparation. The house was quiet when I walked in. Her car was gone, which meant she was probably already at his place, celebrating her dramatic exit. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my favorite chair. The one she always complained made the living room look unbalanced. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but clean, like the air after a thunderstorm. My phone buzzed with texts from her friends, the ones who probably knew about this before I did. Are you okay? We're here if you need to talk. This must be such a shock. I deleted them without responding. Their fake concern was almost insulting. At 7:25 in the evening, I was sitting across from David Peterson, one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the city. He was exactly what I expected. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of smile that meant someone was about to get financially dissected. So, he said, reviewing the notes I'd given him, she left via text. Message: the house is solely in your name and you want to move fast. I want to move decisively. That's music to my ears. Here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, Peterson outlined a strategy that was both legal and beautifully poetic: emergency divorce, filing, asset protection, and something he called swift justice for the emotionally reckless. The man was an artist. One question, he said as we wrapped up. Any chance she'll try to come back and fight this? I thought about the woman who couldn't argue with a waiter about a wrong order without apologizing afterward. She made her choice. She announced it like she was proud of it. Let's see how proud she feels when she realizes what that choice actually costs. Peterson's grin was predatory. This is going to be fun. Walking to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete control. Not the illusion of control you get from managing small things, but the real thing. The kind that comes from having better information, better preparation, and better instincts than everyone else in the room. My wife thought she was writing the ending to our marriage. What she didn't realize was that she'd just handed me the pen. Friday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after making a life-changing decision. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning, not because an alarm forced me to, but because my mind was already 3 steps ahead of the day. Coffee tasted better. The morning news seemed less depressing. Even my reflection in the bathroom mirror looked different, more focused, more alive. By 6 o'clock in the morning, I was already executing phase 1 of what Peterson called strategic preparation. First stop, the bank. The joint account we'd maintained for 12 years was about to become significantly less joint. The bank manager, a woman in her 50s who'd handled our account since we opened. Looked confused when I requested to transfer all funds to my personal account. "Is everything all right? Will your wife be joining us?" "My wife is pursuing other interests. I'm pursuing financial security." She didn't ask follow-up questions. Smart woman. Next came the credit cards, the ones she'd used yesterday to celebrate her new freedom at some expensive restaurant downtown. I knew because she'd posted it on Instagram, champagne glass raised like she'd won the lottery, the location tagged, the man's face partially visible in the background. She was so proud of her secret that she couldn't help broadcasting it. Canceling her cards took exactly 4 phone calls. Each customer service representative offered condolences when I explained the situation. Apparently, spouse abandonment via text message was a category they recognized. By 9 o'clock in the morning, I was back at work, but work felt different now. Conversations with colleagues carried new weight. When my manager mentioned budget cuts and restructuring, I listened differently. When the HR director walked past, talking about employee retention strategies, I paid attention. During lunch, I did some reconnaissance. Her Instagram story was a masterclass in poor decision-making. Pictures from last night's dinner, this morning's breakfast, in bed at what was clearly his apartment, and a selfie with the caption, "Finally living my authentic life." The comments were fascinating. Her girlfriends posting heart emojis and "You deserve happiness" messages, his friends asking, "Who's the new girl?" Her family members commenting with confusion, clearly blindsided by this development. But the most interesting comment came from his ex-wife. "Good luck with that one." I screenshot everything. Peterson had mentioned that social media evidence could be valuable, especially when it demonstrated a pattern of reckless behavior and poor judgment. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone started buzzing. Text messages. From her, each one more desperate than the last. "We need to talk. You're being childish. This affects both of us. Answer your phone." I responded to exactly one message. "All communication goes through my attorney, David Peterson at Peterson & Associates. He's expecting your call." The silence that followed was golden. Peterson called me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with an update. "She contacted us, wants to discuss reasonable arrangements. Apparently, she's having some financial difficulties." "What kind of difficulties?" "The kind that happen when all your credit cards get canceled and your bank account shows insufficient funds. Imagine that." "There's more." I did some research on her new boyfriend. Divorced last year, pays significant alimony, currently 3 months behind on his rent. Your wife certainly knows how to pick winners. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd expected. Her true love was a financial disaster waiting to happen, and she'd just tied herself to his sinking ship. That evening, I changed all the passwords, email, streaming services, online banking, even the Wi-Fi. Each password change felt like removing a chain I didn't know I'd been wearing. The house felt different too, not lonely, but spacious. I ordered pizza from the place she hated, watched the game on full volume, left dishes in the sink without anyone commenting on it. Small freedoms that added up to something larger. Around 10 o'clock at night, I heard her car in the driveway. She had a key, of course, but she'd find out soon enough that keys were the least of her problems. I heard the front door open, heard her heels on the hardwood floor, heard her call my name with artificial sweetness that fooled no one. She found me in the living room, reading a book in my favorite chair. "We need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway like she was still the lady of the house. I looked up from my book, took in her appearance, designer clothes she couldn't afford, jewelry that probably came from him, makeup applied like war paint. She looked like someone playing dress-up. About what? About us? About this situation? About being adults and handling this maturely? I closed my book and set it aside. "You mean about how you abandoned your marriage via text message and are now facing the consequences?" Her confidence flickered. "You canceled my cards. You took money from our account. I secured my assets from someone who announced she was no longer part of my life. That's not how marriage works." I stood up slowly, deliberately. "You're absolutely right. Marriage requires commitment, communication, and mutual respect. You delivered none of those. So we're no longer operating under marriage rules." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. For the first time in our relationship, she was genuinely speechless. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You made your choice. Now you get to live with it completely. The look on her face was worth 12 years of putting up with her nonsense. Saturday morning brought the satisfying sound of a moving truck in my driveway. She was actually going through with it, packing up her belongings like this was some grand romantic gesture instead of the impulsive decision of someone who'd lost touch with reality. I watched from the kitchen window as she directed two movers, her new boyfriend hovering nearby, with the nervous energy of someone who was starting to realize what he'd gotten himself into. He kept checking his phone, glancing at the neighbors who were clearly enjoying the free entertainment. She knocked on the door around noon, not with her key this time, but like a visitor. That small detail told me everything I needed to know about her changing perspective. "I'm taking the bedroom set," she announced when I opened the door. "No, you're not. It was a wedding gift from my mother. Your mother gave us cash. We bought that furniture together with money from my account." Her face went through several expressions before settling on indignant. "You can't keep everything." "I'm not keeping everything. You're welcome to take anything you brought into this marriage, your clothes, your personal items, that collection of self-help books you never read." The boyfriend stepped forward, trying to look intimidating. He was about my height, but softer, the kind of guy who probably hadn't been in a real confrontation since middle school. "Look, man, maybe we can work something out here." I stared at him until he looked away. "The adults are talking." She grabbed his arm when he started to respond, which told me exactly who was really in charge of their relationship. "It's fine. Let him have his furniture. We'll buy better." With what money, I wondered, but kept that observation to myself. The moving process took 3 hours. 3 hours of watching her pack up pieces of a life she'd thrown away via text message. Her friends showed up to help, the same ones who'd been sending me sympathy messages. They avoided eye contact, which was probably smart. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she was gone. The house echoed differently now, but it was a good echo. Clean, honest. I spent Sunday reorganizing, reclaiming spaces that had been compromised by someone else's preferences. The living room looked better without her decorative pillows that served no functional purpose. The kitchen flowed better without her collection of appliances she'd used exactly once. Monday morning brought phase 2, the paperwork delivery. Peterson had recommended a professional process server, a woman who looked like a librarian but moved like a shark. "She'll be at his apartment around noon," he told me. Public service is so much more effective when there's an audience. I was in a client meeting when Peterson called with the update. Delivered successfully. She answered the door in a bathrobe. He was in the background, asking what was happening. The neighbors definitely got a show. How did she react? Like someone who just discovered actions have consequences. She kept saying, "He wouldn't actually do this," while holding the divorce papers. That afternoon, my phone exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails from her friends, from her mother. The universal message was panic disguised as outrage. Her mother's voicemail was particularly entertaining. "I don't know what it's gotten into you, but this isn't how we raised you to treat family." I deleted it without responding. The woman who'd raised her daughter to abandon marriages via text message had interesting ideas about proper behavior. Tuesday brought the first crack in her new relationship. She posted a cryptic Instagram story. "Some people don't know how to fight for what matters." No pictures of him, no location tags, no happy couple content. By Wednesday, the cracks were becoming visible fractures. Her boyfriend posted on Facebook about unexpected complications and needing space to think. His friends started commenting with advice like, "Maybe reconsider," and "red flags everywhere, bro." Thursday evening, she called from a number I didn't recognize. "You're destroying my life. I'm protecting mine." He's having second thoughts. He says the legal stuff is too complicated. Smart man, smarter than I gave him credit for. "This isn't a joke. I have nowhere to go." You had somewhere to go. You had a home, a marriage, a life. You texted it away for someone who's already backing out when things get difficult. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before she spoke again, her voice smaller now, more desperate. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. The time for fixing things was before you announced to the world that you were leaving me for someone better. The time for counseling was before you made your choice public and permanent." "I made a mistake." "No, you made a decision, a very public, very permanent decision. Now you get to live with it. Please." That single word carried 12 years of history, but it was 12 years too late. "My attorney will be in touch regarding asset division and custody arrangements for our shared property. Until then, all communication goes through him." I hung up and blocked the number. Friday afternoon brought the most satisfying phone call of the week. Peterson, barely containing his amusement, delivered the news I'd been waiting for. He broke up with her this morning, told her he couldn't handle the drama and legal complications. She's currently looking for a place to stay because apparently his apartment was never an option for permanent residence. Where is she now? According to my sources, sitting in a Starbucks downtown, calling everyone she knows for a place to crash, the woman who'd left me for someone who actually loved her was now homeless because that love evaporated the moment it came with paperwork and consequences. Justice had a beautiful sense of timing. Saturday morning brought rain, which felt appropriately dramatic for what was unfolding across town. I learned about it through her sister, who called me out of desperation masquerading as concern. She's been calling everyone for help. Mom and Dad won't even answer the phone. Smart parents. This is serious. She's talking about sleeping in her car. She should have considered that before torching her life for someone who couldn't handle the heat. Her sister went quiet for a moment, then tried a different approach. She didn't mean it. She was just confused, going through something. She meant it enough to pack her belongings and move out. She meant it enough to broadcast it on social media. She meant it enough to serve me divorce papers through her actions. The only thing she's confused about now is why those actions have consequences. After hanging up, I poured myself coffee and checked the local real estate listings. Not because I was moving, but because I was curious about market values. My house had appreciated significantly since we bought it. Her timing, like everything else about this situation, was spectacularly poor. Around noon, Peterson called with updates that sounded like scenes from a dark comedy. She showed up at his apartment this morning with suitcases, asking to work things out. He wouldn't even let her pass the lobby. The doorman had to escort her out, harsh but predictable. It gets better. She then went to his workplace, demanding to speak with him about their relationship. Security removed her from the premises. His coworkers got quite a show. The woman who'd left me for someone who actually loved her was now being treated like a stalker by that same person. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, her mother, standing on my doorstep, with the expression of someone who'd come to negotiate the release of a hostage. We need to discuss this situation like adults. I invited her in because I'd always respected her, even when I disagreed with her parenting philosophy. She sat in the living room she'd visited countless times, but now she looked like she was seeing it differently. She made a mistake. She made a choice, a very public, very deliberate choice. She's my daughter. She's scared and alone. She's an adult who announced to the world that she was leaving her husband for another man. That adult is now experiencing the natural consequences of that announcement. Her mother looked around the room, taking in the absence of her daughter's belongings, the masculine simplicity that remained. You've changed. I've stopped pretending that being reasonable means accepting unreasonable behavior. What do you want from this? What's your endgame? I want to rebuild my life without someone who views commitment as optional and consequences as negotiable. I want to wake up tomorrow knowing that my partner chose to be there, not that they're trapped there by financial convenience. She left without accomplishing whatever mission she'd come to fulfill. Sunday evening brought the most revealing development yet. Her former best friend called me, which was surprising since they'd been inseparable since college. I thought you should know. She tried to stay with me. Tried? No, look, I've been watching this train wreck for months. She's been complaining about you, flirting with this guy, making plans behind your back. I told her she was being reckless, but she called me jealous and controlling. Why tell me this now? Because she showed up at my door last night expecting sympathy and a free place to stay. She actually said you were being cruel and vindictive for not letting her come home after her experiment didn't work out. The audacity was breathtaking. She viewed her affair and abandonment as an experiment that I should have patiently waited for her to complete. She's burning bridges faster than she can build them, her friend continued. Everyone's getting tired of the drama. She's exhausting to be around. Monday brought news that her financial situation had deteriorated beyond comedy into genuine crisis. Peterson's investigator had done thorough work. She'd maxed out a credit card trying to maintain her lifestyle while staying. In hotels, the card company cut her off yesterday. She'd applied for 3 different loans and was denied for all of them. What about employment? She quit her job 2 weeks ago, apparently told them she was pursuing new opportunities and wouldn't need the position anymore. The woman who'd left me because I supposedly didn't provide enough excitement had quit her job to chase a man who dumped her within a week. Her strategic planning skills were impressively terrible. Tuesday afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number. Can we meet somewhere neutral to talk? I showed it to Peterson, who laughed. Neutral territory. What does she think this is, a peace negotiation? In her mind, probably. Your response? My response is no response. She made her position clear when she sent that original text. I don't negotiate with people who've already declared the relationship over. Wednesday brought confirmation that her support network had officially collapsed. Another mutual friend called to inform me that she'd been asked to leave her temporary living situation. After only 2 days, she kept talking about how you'd ruined her life. How she was the victim here. Nobody wanted to hear it anymore. Where is she staying now? Last I heard, she was looking into extended stay motels, the cheap ones. The woman who'd left me for a better life was now living in budget accommodations. Unemployed, financially ruined, and socially isolated. Her grand romantic gesture had transformed her from a comfortable, middle-class wife into someone checking motel prices by the week. Thursday evening, I was reviewing divorce paperwork when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw her standing there, but she looked different, smaller, tired, desperate. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. I know I messed up. That's one way to put it. I'm asking for another chance, a real chance to make this right. You had a real chance. You had 12 years of real chances. You traded them for someone who couldn't handle being with you for 1 week. Her eyes filled with tears, but they looked calculated now, performed rather than genuine. Where am I supposed to go? That's a question you should have asked yourself before you left. I closed the door and returned to my paperwork. Outside, I could hear her crying, but it sounded like someone mourning. A death rather than someone who'd voluntarily walked away from a life. The sound eventually faded as she walked back to whatever car she was driving now. Through the window, I watched her sit in an older sedan I didn't recognize, probably borrowed or rented. She sat there for nearly an hour, staring at the house she'd abandoned, the life she'd thrown away, the man she'd underestimated. Finally, she drove away into whatever remained of the future she'd chosen for herself. Friday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn air that usually signals new beginnings. I was having my first peaceful breakfast in weeks when Peterson called with news that perfectly captured the season. She filed a counterpetition yesterday, claims emotional distress, abandonment, and demands half of everything. On what grounds? Apparently, she's arguing that your sudden coldness and financial manipulation forced her to seek comfort elsewhere. Her lawyer is painting you as the villain who drove her to infidelity. I almost laughed. She's claiming I abandoned her after she literally texted me that she was leaving. Her narrative is that you pushed her away emotionally, forcing her to find love elsewhere, and then cruelly punished her for seeking happiness. What's our response? Documentation. We have her text message declaring she was leaving. We have social media posts celebrating her new relationship. We have witness statements about her moving out voluntarily. Her story falls apart under basic scrutiny. That afternoon brought validation in an unexpected form. Her former boyfriend's ex-wife called me directly. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from a mutual friend. I wanted to warn you about what you're dealing with. I'm listening. She did the same thing to my marriage, moved in on him while he was going through our divorce. Convinced him I was the problem, got him to make grand gestures and promises. Then, when the reality of his financial situation became clear, she disappeared. How long did that take? About 3 weeks. She's a predator who targets men during vulnerable moments, then abandons them when they can't provide the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. The pattern was becoming clear. I hadn't been her first victim, just her most recent target. The difference was that I'd refused to play the victim role. Saturday brought an escalation that crossed every line of acceptable behavior. I was working in my home office when I heard voices in my backyard. Through the window, I saw her walking around my property with someone who looked like a real estate appraiser. I stepped outside, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees just from my presence. What exactly are you doing on my property? The appraiser looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, you said you had permission to show the house. She lied. This is my house. She doesn't live here anymore, and you're trespassing. She tried to maintain her composure. I have rights as your wife. You have rights as my soon-to-be ex-wife, none of which include bringing strangers onto my property without permission. The appraiser gathered his materials quickly and left without another word. Smart man. You can't keep me away from what's rightfully mine, she said after he was gone. I'm not keeping you away from anything that's rightfully yours. But this house isn't rightfully yours. Your name isn't on the deed, the mortgage, or any document that matters. Her mask slipped completely. You manipulated me. You made sure everything was in your name so you could control me. I protected my assets because I worked for them. You benefited from that protection for 12 years the moment you decided. You didn't want those benefits anymore. You lost access to them. My lawyer says I can claim common law ownership. Your lawyer can claim whatever generates billable hours. Reality is what matters in court. She stood there for a moment, probably calculating her next move. Then she played what she thought was her trump card. I know about your retirement accounts, the 401k, the investment portfolio. I'm entitled to half of everything accumulated during our marriage. You're entitled to exactly what the law provides after the court reviews your decision to abandon the marriage for another man." Her confidence cracked slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean that adultery affects asset division in this state, especially when that adultery is documented, celebrated on social media, and voluntarily admitted through text message." The color drained from her face as the implications hit her. Sunday brought news that her support system had completely collapsed. Her sister called me again, but this time her tone was different. "I need you to understand something. She's been staying with different people, wearing out her welcome everywhere she goes. She's becoming bitter and desperate. That's unfortunate, but not surprising. She's talking about doing something drastic, maybe trying to force you to take her back. Such as?" "I don't know exactly, but she keeps saying she's not going to let you win this." Monday morning brought the drastic action her sister had warned me about. I arrived home from work to find my front door standing open and voices inside my house. I called Peterson immediately. "She's inside my house with people I don't recognize. Call the police right now." Already dialing. The police arrived within minutes, which was fortunate because the situation inside was even worse than I'd imagined. She'd brought what appeared to be a locksmith and was attempting to change the locks on my own house. The senior officer looked at the deed I'd brought outside, then at her, then back at the paperwork. "Ma'am, this isn't your residence. You need to leave immediately. I'm his wife. I have rights. You have the right to hire a lawyer and settle this in court. You don't have the right to break into someone else's property." The locksmith packed up his tools without a word. Professional courtesy between tradesmen, I suppose. She tried one last appeal to authority. "Officer, he's being vindictive. He locked me out of my own home." "Ma'am, according to these documents, this is his home. If you feel you have a legal claim, that's a matter for the courts." After they escorted her off the property, I stood in my violated house, assessing what she'd touched, what she'd moved, what she'd tried to claim. The desperation was almost tangible. Tuesday brought the final humiliation of her week. Peterson called with news that sounded like the climax of a tragic opera. She was arrested last night. For what? Trespassing and attempted burglary at her former boyfriend's apartment building. Apparently she tried to break into his unit using the emergency stairwell. The woman who'd left me for someone who actually loved her had been reduced to breaking into his apartment like a common criminal. Where is she now? Released on her own recognizance, but there's a restraining order. She can't go within 500 feet of him or his residence. What about us? I'm filing for one today. This behavior pattern is escalating, and we need legal protection for you. By Wednesday, the restraining order was in place. She was legally prohibited from coming within 200 feet of me or my property. The woman who'd spent 12 years sharing my bed was now forbidden by law from approaching my house. Thursday evening brought a final phone call from her mother, who sounded exhausted and defeated. "She's moving back home with us." "I'm sorry it came to that." "No, you're not. And honestly, I don't blame you anymore. I've watched what she's done, how she's acted, the choices she's made. This isn't the daughter I raised. People change." She didn't change. She revealed who she really was when she thought she had something better lined up. You just refused to pretend otherwise. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet house, surrounded by the peace she'd inadvertently given me. Her desperate attempts to undo her choices had only reinforced how right those choices had been. She'd wanted excitement, adventure, a man who would fight for her. Instead, she'd found a man who knew exactly what she was worth and treated her accordingly. The difference between us was simple. She'd viewed our marriage as a safety net she could abandon. When something better came along, I'd viewed it as a foundation that deserved protection. Now, she was discovering the difference between safety nets and foundations. One catches you when you fall, the other keeps you from falling in the first place. She'd chosen to jump and I'd chosen not to catch her. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized on a Tuesday that felt like any other day, which was exactly how I wanted it. No drama, no last-minute appeals, just signatures on documents that made official what her text message had started. Peterson called with the final numbers. House stays with you, retirement accounts remain intact, and she gets exactly what she brought into the marriage plus her personal belongings, which amounts to about $3,000 and a used Honda Civic. The woman who demanded half of everything got less than what some people spend on a vacation. But she'd made her priorities clear when she chose excitement over stability. That afternoon, I drove past the house where her parents lived. Her old Honda was parked in the driveway next to her father's truck, looking small and defeated. Through the window, I could see movement inside. Probably her helping with dinner or watching daytime television. 6 months ago, she'd been posting Instagram stories about living her authentic life. Now she was 34 years old, unemployed, living with her parents, and legally prohibited from contacting the man she'd left me for. The karma was so complete it almost felt planned. I didn't feel satisfaction exactly, more like closure, the kind of closure that comes from watching someone choose their consequences and then receive exactly what they'd chosen. By autumn, I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetings and dinner conversations, with women who understood that actions have consequences and words have meaning. The difference was startling. My house had become what it was always meant to be, a home for someone who valued it. I'd redecorated the living room, upgraded the kitchen, turned her former craft room into a proper office. Every change felt like reclaiming territory that had been temporarily occupied. One evening in October, my neighbor mentioned he'd seen her drive past the house earlier that week. She slowed down, sat there for a few minutes, then drove off. Probably just curious about the neighborhood maybe, but she looked different, older, tired. That night, I thought about the woman who texted me that she was leaving for someone who actually loved her. Where was that love now? Where was the excitement she'd been chasing? Where was the authentic life she'd been seeking? She was living in her childhood bedroom, driving a 15-year-old car, and facing the reality that excitement without foundation is just chaos. Meanwhile, I was living in the house I'd worked for, surrounded by the peace I'd protected, building the future I'd chosen to secure. The final irony came in November when Peterson forwarded me a message her lawyer had sent. She was asking if I'd consider a post-divorce reconciliation meeting to discuss mutual healing and closure. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Some people spend their entire lives looking for someone to complete them. I'd spent 3 months discovering that I was already complete. She'd thought leaving me would teach me what I'd lost. Instead, it taught me what I was worth. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.